Hello and welcome to the Fit and Free podcast. This is a podcast for women who want it all, to feel strong and confident in their bodies, as well as enjoying a sneaky mug on a Friday night. I'm an exercise physiologist and sports nutritionist, here to teach you how to achieve your body goals without food and your body controlling your life. So let's jump in. Hey, hi. Welcome back to another episode of the Fit and Free Potty. I am on such a high because I've just gotten off a call with the special guest who I've actually interviewed for today's podcast. And this is the amazing Robyn Shaw. We had an amazing conversation because we've got so many aligned values when it comes to nutrition and exercise. So Robyn has been an online coach for 7 years now. And she has this beautiful quote, and she quoted this in the podcast itself, is where she lives in a grey area of sustainability and balance. Exercise and nutrition is not something that controls her life. It is something that enhances her life. And she has so many valuable lessons that she's going to share with us today in the episode. We speak to the importance of making sure we're fueling our bodies correctly and not living in a calorie deficit. Why burning off your food is actually not going to help you with weight loss, and how you can actually eat more and look better. So I'm so excited to dive into the episode. But first, before we jump in, if you haven't yet left a review on Apple Podcasts and you are enjoying the show, it would mean the world to me if you could take 1 minute of your time, open the Apple app, scroll down to the review section and just write your, you don't even have to write anything. You put the star rating. But the reason why I ask is because reviews really help grow the show. And if you've been here for a while, you know my mission is to help women eat more, be more comfortable with food and get really strong in their bodies. So I want to get this podcast into as many listeners' ears as possible, and that 2 minutes of your time can really help me do that. So thank you, love you, and let's jump into the episode. All right, Robyn, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast today. I'm so excited to have you here.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Of course. If everyone needs to go and jump over, I'm just going to say it right now, because if you like my content, you're going to love Robyn's content, because she is the no BS weight loss coach, and literally everything she talks about is exactly the same as me. So guys, you need to check this out.
We vibe well together. Yeah.
So let's dive into the first question. I really want to talk about the biggest problem with crash diets. Why is eating low calories all of the time a problem for a lot of women, and why doesn't this work?
I think one of the key things you said there is all of the time, right? Yeah. There is nothing wrong with you wanting to go, and I say you very loosely, anybody listening, wanting to go into a calorie deficit for the sake of seeing fat loss. Sure, that's fine in and of itself, a vacuum, a calorie deficit. We know that's necessary to see weight loss. The keynote there is all of the time, which is what women do, right? So what we're seeing is, women who jump on, let's say their very first diet, they cut down their calories, they see some weight loss. Naturally, that weight loss plateaus. What do? They cut calories even more. They plateau again, they cut calories even more. And it's this cycle. And, all in an effort to get to that goal weight, and I'm doing quotations, whatever that goal weight may be for you, as fast as possible. And what that ends up resulting in at the end of the day is, these women eating 800, 1200 calorie diets, with an incredibly slow metabolism, with poor eating habits, with a poor relationship with food. And I think that is kind of the key. You cannot be in a calorie deficit all of the time. You can't be cutting down your food all of the time. And why? Because your body can't lose weight all of the time. And so it's we can't just diet our way down to being nothing. So what is our body going to do? It's going to downregulate our systems, whether that's everything from your digestive system, your endocrine system, your like your basal metabolic rate, like everything is going to adjust in an effort to adapt to your current intake, right? So when you eat at a lower intake and you create that deficit, what is your body doing? It is down regulating by making yourself smaller, by losing body fat, by losing muscle, by doing whatever it needs to do to match your intake. And that's where plateaus happen, right? That metabolic adaptation process is exactly why plateaus happen. And so, and then when that happens, what we should be doing is we should be eating at maintenance for a while. We should be hanging out. We should be building muscle. We should be focusing on our habits. We should be focusing on growth, abundance. How can I add in more habits instead of how can I reduce even more? How can I be even less? And so to answer that second question that you said, like, why does it not work long term, is for that exact reason. Our body is a very, very good and very smart at stopping ourselves from losing weight in an aggressive and fast manner. So yeah, it's, I mean, just as well as I do, the amount of women that are now frustrated after years of dieting, unable to see further results, is for that exact reason. Your metabolism is kind of giving you the middle finger, to be honest.
That's such a lovely way of putting it. Your metabolism giving you the middle finger.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's so common, right? We see it all the time. It's that same pattern. It's like people do those, low calories and cardio, then they reach that plateau, and then they do more and more. I would love to know your opinion in terms of why is cardio there with that, making it actually worse for people?
Yeah, I think that's a really great question. And there's so many opinions on this, right? But here's what the science says, because I can speak from anecdotes and I can speak from client experience and I can speak from my own experience. And I don't want to ever say that cardio is bad. Like, you'll never hear me say something is bad, right? Whether it's a food, a method of exercise, like whatever it is. What I will say is this: too much stress, whatever that looks like, will result in weight loss resistance. So if you are spending now, and so that's one part of it, because I think there's another part of it too that I think is important of addressing.
Yeah.
If you're, and so when I'm talking about cardio, I don't mean like you're on the treadmill walking at an incline, in a like speed walking for half an hour. I mean cardio, like HIIT classes, right? Yeah. Orange Theory. I don't know if you guys have Orange Theory over there. Like
high intensity
boot
stuff.
camps. Yeah. The boot camp style stuff. Yeah. Where it's like very lightweight or body weight. You don't really have time to actually tax the muscles because you're not doing that much heavy lifting. You're actually just moving very fast. So there's that type of cardio, which is, even though it's a good form of stress, it still is stress on the body. And a lot of women do too much of that with not enough recovery between the sessions, compounded with not enough food between sessions to recover, thus resulting in that weight loss resistance. So that's one kind of way of looking at cardio. So when I have a lot of clients who are doing that like repetitive 6-7 days a week of like high intensity exercise, I'm like, bro, chill. Like, let's like maybe do 2 or 3 days. Let's get you walking more, like go outside, take a look at the trees, like go lift up like a heavier dumbbell every once in a while. Like, let's kind of switch things up. And even just that small change, we see huge positive effects on cortisol levels dropping, recovery increasing. And we know to like build muscle, you need to recover, right?
Yeah.
So that's the one side of things. Now, the other side of things, when we talk about cardio, and we've already kind of touched on this already, your body's very good at adapting, right? Super good at adapting. We can't really outsmart our body a lot of the time. When you do cardio, you get better at cardio. Your body gets better at cardio. So let's say you hop on a treadmill and you run 5K, and it's your first ever time running 5K. Your body is going to burn X amount of calories, right? And it's going to burn quite a significant amount of calories because you're not in shape, you haven't run in a very long time, you're breathing super heavy, you're exhausted, it's your first ever 5K, you're like, holy crap, this is so hard.
Yeah.
Run that same 5K 6 months down the road, and your body is more efficient. It's going to burn a fraction of the same calories doing the exact same amount of work. So when women are relying on cardio to burn calories after months and months or years and years and years of doing cardio, our body's pretty good at doing cardio at that point. It's not going to burn that much extra calories. And then so the result that you see when you first start doing cardio versus the results that you see years or months later is not the same. But however, it is drastically different when you do weightlifting. We can see constant progression weightlifting. Now, of course, we have newbie gains, right? Like everyone goes in the gym for the first time and they can PR all of their lifts the first time they enter. And you see that taper off, but you can continuously progress through progressive overload doing weightlifting. So that's the kind of second piece of the cardio. You're not actually burning that many calories doing cardio. And it is so easy to overestimate the number of calories you're doing during cardio and underestimate the amount of calories that you eat after, right? You're like, oh my God, I just did like the best cardio session. I'm going to go and eat a burger and French fries because I deserve it. Okay, great. But you just totally undid and then some the amount of effort that you put in the gym, right?
Yeah.
So that's the kind of two ways of looking at it.
Yeah. And like, first of all, I love your opinion on like nothing is bad. I totally agree with that. Like cardio is a fantastic tool, right? It's so good for your cardiovascular health and all the things. However, if you're using it in a negative way like this, then it becomes the problem. Like exercise now is some sort of almost like a punishment rather than something that's actually making us feel good. So yep. I love that in terms of, yes, we adapt, we get better. So we're not burning as many calories. So we feel like we're putting in all the effort and then we self-sabotage because we're like, far out. Like, why am I not seeing a result? So I love that you speak about that. And this actually like goes really well into my next question. It's this, like, I really want to talk about this whole myth of like working off your food. You see it all the time. Women are like, and I actually saw it on the internet the other day. It was like, I was looking at this calorie calculator and it was like, to work off this Mars bar, you have to do 30 minutes of cardio.
Yes. Or have you seen do you guys have crumble cookies in Australia?
No.
Okay. And I don't even think we have it in Canada, honestly, but obviously we're right above the US. And so I always get like content from the States. And so there's crumble cookies is, I don't know, just a chain cookie restaurant in the States. And their cookies are like 800 to 1,000 calories each cookie. Like they are ridiculous. And they're so popular. And there's a video kind of going around of this guy who ate a cookie and then has a watch on and he says, okay, I'm going to run until I burn off my crumble cookie. And I think he ends up running like 12 kilometers or something like that, like something crazy. And anyways, it just totally reminded me of that as well, of these like, run off your Mars bar or run off your crumble cookie. It's crazy. But I think I'll say this, and I can kind of like sum up maybe all of my thoughts on this pretty succinctly. The gym is not a place where you burn fat. The gym's not a place for you to lose body fat. It's not a place for you to lose weight. And if you can shift your mindset and your perspective on what the gym is for, then I think you'll end up shifting your perspective on that whole like reward system, right? Mm-hmm. Now, the reward system is a very like, it's tricky. Food for a lot of people is dopamine, right? Like it is
absolutely
so connected to that neural pathway in our brain that gives us that sense of pleasure and reward. And so I also want to be super mindful and aware of like, I'm never here to belittle somebody's like cravings or somebody's desire to reward themselves by any means. Like, oh my gosh, like I had like 4 cookies after a massive leg day yesterday. Like I still do it too, you know? There's nothing wrong as long as you're aware of what you're doing and as long as you understand that it's intentional, right? Like I had the intention of giving myself cookies after a big leg day because I planned it and I wanted to, and it makes me happy and I like flexibility and freedom in my diet.
Yeah.
When it becomes unhealthy is when it happens as a reaction or it happens as just a jerk kind of reaction to maybe a feeling or emotion or something that's unplanned, right?
Yeah.
And so I think like I just wanted to add that in just to make sure that like we're all human here, you know, like we're not perfect. But if we can wrap our head around the fact, like, what is the gym for? The gym is for improving your mobility, improving your flexibility, increasing muscle mass, which ultimately kind of builds that, like your muscle is your armor. Oh my gosh. Like I was listening to a podcast the other day And the woman who was on it was literally like, your muscle is the only thing preventing you from being stuck to a chair in your 70s and 80s.
I
And
love
like,
that.
it's the only thing that's preventing you from living the life that you don't want to live, or your lack of muscle, I should
The
say. So
longevity. Mm.
yeah, the longevity, like it's your armor. So I think use the gym for that intention. And then if you want to, shed body fat or anything like that, like all that's done in the kitchen. It's done in the 23 other hours of the day that you're not spending in the gym, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then like I reckon we do have to bring up in terms of like how many calories exercise actually burns in a day, right? Like it only contributes to 5% of our daily movement from everything that we're burning. And I don't think a lot of people are actually even aware of that.
Mm-mm. No, I did a TikTok about that recently, actually. And yeah, I kind of circle back to that every once in a while too. It's so funny. I mean, I'm sure you understand, you probably get this too, as like people in the industry who are coaching this and who think about it so often. It's so easy for us to forget that other people don't always remember it. You know what I'm saying? So it's
Absolutely.
so it's so such a conscious effort of me circling back to these basic kind of like points of understanding, and that is a perfect one. When we take a look at where we're burning calories all day, we have, and I I call people who try and burn the calories in the gym the lazy athlete, because, and I used to be this person. I was
Okay.
when I was a CrossFitter and I was doing CrossFit like all the time. I was competing in it. I was working out like 2 hours a day. And then I would get out of the gym and I would sit all day. Like, because
Yeah.
I was exhausted. I
Yeah.
was exhausted. I was sore. I would want to recover. I thought I deserved it. I would just sit all day.
Mm-hmm.
And you should see the difference in my body composition when I was doing that type of training versus like maybe 45 minutes of training 5 days a week with like 10,000, 12,000 steps in a day. It is drastically
Wild,
different.
right?
It's
Mm.
crazy. And so I think like, so what I was doing previously was I was optimizing that 5%. Now I'm optimizing the 15% of exercise activity, like non-exercise activity.
Yeah.
Um, so for those listening and maybe they're confused, I just want to clarify.
Right.
So exercise activity, like if you take a look at your total daily energy expenditure, your TDEE, like that is quite literally all of the calories that you burn throughout the day from the moment you wake up to the moment you go to bed, and even while you're sleeping, burning calories. And so in that 24 hours, you have a certain amount of calories that you're burning. 75% of those calories comes from you doing nothing.
Yeah.
It just comes from you
I think
existing, right?
I
So
just want to
you
pause you
wake up.
there. Sorry, I
Okay.
really
Yeah.
want to pause you there. And I want you to say that again because I want everyone to know, because something a lot of my clients struggle with is they feel so
Mm,
guilty and they feel like they can't eat more food if they haven't exercised yet, or like there's
right.
so many things that are going on with that. So please
Okay.
repeat that to
This is
everyone.
helpful. Okay, I
Yeah.
love that. Like we can like really kind of dive into this then on the importance of it, because yeah, what I just said there. So yeah, for those of you who are listening who are working with Laura and you're and you're having a hard time like feeling like
Everyone.
getting rid of that guilt or feeling like you need to get into the gym every day, like first of all, don't worry. I've been so long, so many years I did that, like, and even to this day, right? You fall into the kind of trap of, oh,
Yeah.
I feel like I need to move or whatever. Let me tell you something. I just took 5 days off of working out. I was fighting a bit of a cold, and every day I could have had that mental battle, but at the end of the day, I kept reminding myself, you have put in the work, you've built a foundation, nothing is going to happen, right? Like literally nothing is going to happen. So anyways, 75% of your total daily calories burned comes from you doing nothing.
Nothing.
So literally nothing. You could lie in bed all day, watch Netflix, and you will still burn 75% of the calories that you would burn if you lived a normal day otherwise, right? So 75% goes to just your basal metabolic rate. On top of that, we have roughly maybe 10% going to your thermic effect of eating. So there are calories that are being burned when you eat, of course. Like this is why we push, high protein diet, high veggie diet, all those good things, because your body needs to break those things down and it needs to digest them and put them to good use. And so that obviously takes energy. So up to 10% of your energy goes to actually eating. And then 15% of that goes to your NEAT, so non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And this is your walking. This is like using your brain. This is fidgeting. This is, I talk with my hands a lot. So I always say, like, me doing this and talking with my hands is, non-exercise activity. Cleaning the house, walking the dog, like all of these things that are not focused and intentional exercise. 15% of that goes to that, which is higher than a lot of people think.
Yeah.
And then a measly 5% goes to your exercise activity. So the time and effort that you actually spend in the gym working out, only 5% of your calories come from that time. So my question for you listening would be, why are we so stressed out about the 5% when we should be optimizing the 15%? Right? And I think that is such a good perspective shift for so many women who stress out about the gym and feel guilty for not going to the gym. I challenge you to prioritize your walks. That's what I do. Like, if I can't get to the gym, I'm like, okay, cool. I'm just going to go out for an extra long walk today and enjoy the sunshine and walk my dog and all that kind of stuff. And you feel really good about it.
Yeah, and I love that so much. And I'm such an advocate of like really being able to be in tune with your body and being really like able to listen to it. And like if you're going through a phase of like the gym is not supportive of you right now, like you're super stressed out, you're not recovering properly, then having a rest is going to be more beneficial than pushing yourself to go, because you're just going to.
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
yeah. And what did we just talk about too? We talked about like the body resisting weight loss when it's under too much stress, right? So if you're fighting a cold or you're fighting stress or you're fighting a busy day at work or the kids are driving you nuts or like whatever it is, you going to the gym is not doing you any good, right? Because your muscles aren't going to be able to recover. You're not going to be able to recover. You're not going to be able to push yourself hard enough. Like, yeah, I think that's a really great point that you just said.
yeah, and like I fully feel all of it, because I honestly, like, I would say borderline had an exercise addiction, and I used to use exercise to manage my stress, but because I was always living a high stressful life, I was just putting my body into more stress going to do my HIIT and my cardio, which was like the reason why my body, like my digestion was shit, I lost my period, all the things, like I was in such an unhealthy state, but I didn't realize it because of this, because of that addiction. So it's such an important message.
And it's tricky too. There's a couple things that you said there that I always get little light bulbs and to go in like tangents. One of the things that you said there was your digestive system, like you weren't able to digest food properly when you're so stressed out. Like we live in two, like our nervous system is split in two, right? We have the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight. And then we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest. So if you look at those two opposing things, how can you expect your body to absorb the nutrients it needs to digest your food properly, to actually put the food that you're putting into your mouth to good use, which is you need to be in that parasympathetic state? How can you expect it to do that when you're always in that sympathetic state, right? And so I like that when I correlated and I guess assimilated the parasympathetic nervous state to rest and digest, because that is kind of like its alternate name. And I took that very literally. And so when you eat, this is why I think a lot of people really promote eat distraction free. Don't eat when you're on a business call. Try to eat like just sit down and relax and eat and enjoy your food, because you need to be in that parasympathetic low frequency kind of like state of being to actually allow your body to absorb the nutrients it needs. So that was just a tangent that I kind of thought of when you said that. And I totally forgot the other one that I was thinking about, but it'll probably come to me at some point.
Yeah, I love that. It's mindful eating is so big. And because like, how are you even going to notice that you're full if you're, on a stressful work call, and because all your attention is, everything is going there. So it makes complete sense why this stuff is actually really important, yet so many people are not paying attention to it.
Exactly. Yeah. These little things, they all add up.
Absolutely. It's because so many people, like, this is something that I see through, personal experience and working with all my clients as well, is because there is so much attachment to the weight loss. It's like, that's all they think about, that's all they want. And so everything else kind of just gets thrown out the window. Does that happen to your clients as well?
Oh my God, yeah. Especially because of who specifically we're working with. We work with the recovering dieter, right?
Yeah.
We work with the women who have literally grown up in the world of Weight Watchers, and now they're doing the Optavia diet or whatever it is, or Bernstein diet, Jenny Craig, like all of, you know, the Beachbody diet, like all of these things. Like they grew up in that world of dieting in an effort to be smaller. They grew up in the world of Kate Moss saying nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. They grew up in that world of, right? Yeah, like that is ingrained in their mind.
Absolutely.
And so the hardest part of our job is that reframe, that like mental
Absolutely.
reframe, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, my job as a coach and my team of coaches, yeah, we can tell you, like, yes, we'll talk to you about food and macros and this, that, whatever, and we'll help you structure your meal plan. But like the hard work is detaching your self-worth and your success and, you know, who you are from the scale.
The number on the
And that's
scale.
not
Yeah.
to say we don't use the scale as a tool. I'm very much for using the scale as a tool to help us understand our bodies
Same.
and kind of collecting that objective data to really kind of help us navigate the journey, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not against the scale. But I am against using the scale as our only measurement of our success and our progression, right? So that's why, you know, and we, I mean, we get it all the time. You know, we have a client who will come to us and they say, you know, I've been with you for X amount of weeks or months and I haven't seen the scale go down, and what's going on? And then I say, well, Sally, your protein's up. You know, you're fit into your pants that you haven't fit into in forever. You've been more consistent than ever. Your
Eating
sleep
more
is
food.
back. Your sex drive is back. You're happier around your husband and your kids. Like, but you're upset that you haven't lost more than 5 pounds. Like, what's going on there? And then it's like that tough conversation of, oh yeah, like I guess you're right, right? Like we've never been taught to look at these things. We've always been taught to step on the scale and you look at that 3 numbers and say like, oh, okay, am I good or am I bad or am I on track or am I off track? It is a huge part of our clients' journey, and it's the hardest part for sure.
Absolutely. It's learning to be able to learn who you are away from a number of the scale or the size of your body is so big. And I truly believe this, and this is something that I'm so big on teaching, is like until you're actually able to completely break free of that, you'll like, if you can't, then you will continue to self-sabotage, because it's that same story of like, if the scale isn't going down or if the clothes aren't like changing straight away, it's, oh, maybe I'll skip breakfast. Maybe I'll have the black coffee for breakfast, you know? So it's such an important part of everyone's journey. And I don't think enough people are looking at it. People are just focusing on meal plans and people are just focusing on exercise programs without even looking at the main driver of their behavior, which is their beliefs. So,
Oh, well said. Yeah, really, really well said. And I think that yeah, like you nailed it. You really kind of nailed it there. I think like understanding your why, understanding like what's the reason for, and also too another totally like relevant thought is we're women. Like we're just women. Like we're going to fluctuate in weight, dude.
yes.
Like you're going and accept it. Like you fluctuate, whether it's the time of month or the stress levels or what you ate last night, and we are going to like maintaining weight. I think everyone needs to hear this because I literally have been like screaming this at my clients lately, and I just need to them to listen to it, because clients will be like, oh my God, I like my maintenance, I've gained 5 pounds or whatever. That is maintenance, right? Like you're maintaining your weight is fluctuating or ranging up to like 12 pounds, right?
Yeah.
Like I live my year between like 150 to 100, or like 148 to 160 pounds. I'm at 148 when I'm pretty dialed in and I'm like consistent and there's not too much socially happening or like whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm a happy 160 in the middle of the summer when I want to lounge around in the pool in the lake and drink some, you know, margaritas, right? So but that to me is my maintenance, right?
Yeah.
Anything like out of that 160 or below, like I would say like, okay, I'm either gaining or I'm losing. But I think women need to understand like you are maintaining if you're around the same 5 to 10 pounds roughly, right? Because that way you get to look at the scale and you don't freak out, like you said, when you are 3 pounds heavier, and you don't self-sabotage the entire rest of your week, right? Maintaining that consistency is so important over time.
Yeah, and I
A
love
very
how
tangential thinker and speaker, as you're probably realizing now.
yeah, no, I absolutely love it. And I love your frame of maintenance is a spectrum ultimately. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, is that whole perfectionism thinking, and that like all or nothing. And if it's not this exact thing, then it's wrong. So I think
Yeah.
really coming to a point of like acceptance of, and like, because that acceptance, right, it's going to give us so much freedom. And instead
Mm.
of making it wrong or right, it's like it's sitting in that gray almost, and then being so okay with that.
The gray area is where I live, girl.
Me too,
Where,
but I never
where I
did it.
live.
Oh my God, I was
Yeah.
so black and white.
Yeah. The gray area is where happiness is. It's yeah. And I think I try, I mean, you know how it is on social media. You always try to give as much context and as much nuance and as much gray as possible, right? But it's hard when you're trying to capture the attention of people, and
Don't like
you're trying to
gray.
give, right, when you're trying to give information in a 30-second reel or whatever, it's
Yeah,
difficult on social media. But I think yeah, I honestly truly believe that like your happiest and healthiest body is in that middle zone. It's when you are like, I mean, I look at my own personal experience. I'm like, yeah, I've had a six pack. I've been shredded, and I was healthy looking. I was eating like absolutely rigidly clean, but I was miserable, like saying no to social outings all the time,
yeah,
worrying about if I was going to, like that. And then there's the other end of the spectrum of you get off of that plan, you kind of rebound in the opposite direction, and you start eating whatever you want, and
yeah,
you're throwing caution to the wind, and you're really just doing like, screw it.
yeah.
You're in that like constant screw it mentality. You're also not happy or healthy there either,
No,
right? So don't replace, I'm literally just made a piece of content about this that I'm going to post probably this week. Like, do not replace one unhealthy habit with another
I love
in an
that.
effort to like, right. And it's so common, like find that balance. But and I think that's what we're doing with a lot of our women now too, because what we're seeing is this epidemic of women who have crash dieted are
Yeah,
now rebelling against that crash dieting period. And
yeah,
they're in that kind of screw it, or excuse my language, fuck it phase of their life. They're eating whatever they want. They're putting on that weight gain. Like, they're doing all of these things and they can't find that balance. So what we're doing is, our job is to try and pull them back in and pull them in to like find that happy medium, right?
yeah,
It's
absolutely.
hard. Yeah.
It's so hard. And because like I experienced that too. And it's really hard for people to get their head around, especially when they're so attached to wanting to be in a smaller body. Same thing
Yep.
happened to me. Like I was in my smallest body, and I remember looking at myself being like, I am the unhappiest I have ever been. Like,
Yep.
same with me. No social life, totally disconnected. I was cold. I was irritable. I was so fucking moody.
Yep.
That wasn't happiness. So
Yep.
I think there's so much, like, it's so important to be speaking about this message specifically. It's like, you're so right in terms of like still feeling really good and confident in our bodies, but with a sense of balance and a sense of gray.
Exactly. Exactly. And then that comes all with a big part of that is, so I mean, as we're on the topic of social media, it's so easy to compare yourself to other people, right?
So much.
And see highlight reels of people's bodies, um and really understanding like, god, most of the people that you see online who are able to rock a six-pack year round, like, it's their genetics, man. It's
Genetics.
nothing else. Literally just genetics. Like, if you
Yeah.
weren't blessed with a six-pack out of the womb, like, sorry, like, it's unattainable and it's unsustainable. And I think those people, those are like my pet peeve, honestly. Those people who are rocking the six-pack and trying to promote a program like as if they got there with that program. It's like,
Oh, that
girl,
grinds my gears.
just chaps my ass. Like, no, like,
I
absolutely
know.
not.
It's the classic influencer that does the selfie photo in the mirror, buy my workout and you're gonna look like me. I'm like, babe, you've been strength training for the last 7 years. You've built all this muscle. This high intensity program is not going to, people are not gonna look like you if they do it.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, it's so funny. Yep, you just got to ignore them. Like go through. I try and get my clients to do like an Instagram, like I don't know, like refresh where they just
Yeah.
go through and they unfollow a bunch of accounts and stuff and just, it's important to do every once in a while. It's easy for your feed to get full of garbage,
Yeah, absolutely. And I love this conversation because I have a little bit of a different perspective on it. And because I
Mm.
was the same, I was like, screenshotting six packs and putting them on my screensaver. But now, like, because I've built a healthy relationship with myself and my body, and that was the biggest thing to help me stop comparing myself to others, because there was a lack of, internal self-worth and like making myself wrong every time I was looking at somebody else. I now am such an advocate for changing the story of comparison and really utilizing it as a tool of looking at other people and being like, well, if it's possible, of course, genetics aside, but like if it's possible for somebody else, it is absolutely possible for me as well. And then being able to look at it, being like, well, what are they doing differently that I'm not? Like, where am I playing victim to my own circumstances, being like, she's so lucky, it's so easy for her? What is the piece that I actually have to take responsibility for and step up and actually, build the skill without,
Yep.
because a big thing that I used to do was like, if I was shit at anything, I'd be like, I'm not good enough. If I'm not there yet,
Yep.
I'm not good enough. If I don't look like her, then I'm not good enough. But
Yeah.
because I was able to, detach myself and detach me being good at something.
Yeah, no, I totally understand what you're saying. Like
Yeah.
detaching you being good at something from your like value, your overall value.
Exactly. And then I was able to look at these people, instead of making it mean something about myself and making the reason why I was shit and I wasn't good enough. I was like, okay, how do I get stronger? How do I deadlift 100 kilos? How do I squat, 80, 90 kilos? Like, how can I get better? And how can I take responsibility of this? Because at the end of the day, if it's possible for these people, it's going to be possible for me as well.
Yeah, I really like that perspective. And I think it's a couple things what's happening there. Like number one, you are questioning like what can my body do for me?
Yeah.
Like instead of how small can I make my body or how am I supposed to look or whatever, right? Like, and I think that's why working out in general is so important,
Yeah.
is because it gives you a level of confidence that you can't find anywhere else, because all of a sudden you're capable of doing these things that you've never done before. Like you said, deadlifting 100 kilos, squatting it, whatever it is for you, right? So I think there's that level of confidence that comes there from getting into the gym and shifting that perspective to, okay, this is my body, what can it do for me? And then there's also that, again, like coming all the way back to balance. Like it's a balance of, okay, there's like looking at somebody on the internet and being emotional about it, making an emotional reaction to what you see
Yeah.
and compare it to yourself and where you are now. But then you can also look at it, like you said, objectively. What
Yes.
are they doing? What are they like how and I think doing it that way, and this is why like I try and incorporate such a balance in our programming of the emotion and the objective kind of side of things, because
Yeah.
objective data is so important. It's going to
Absolutely.
be the thing that levels you up,
Mhm.
right? It is like, so objectively looking at what their program is and how much they're lifting and what they're doing and all of these things
How many
that
carbs
you
they're
quote
eating, all
unquote
of the things.
want to be, you
Mhm.
need to take note of what they're doing, because that's how you're going to get there. But at the same time, you need to take the emotion out of it and understand like you may or may not look like them at the end of the day. And
Mhm.
if you don't, that's where we need to practice the self-worth and self-gratitude and self-acceptance, because if you don't end up looking like them, you need to be okay with where you are, because you know that you're doing the right things,
Yeah.
right? And I
Yeah.
think a lot of
100%.
women, that's where the key frustration comes from, is they don't feel like they're doing the right things, or they're confused, or they're
Yeah.
overwhelmed, or they think that there's something else they should be doing, or they're not 100% confident in what they're doing. And so if they're not confident in what you're doing, A, you're going to be inconsistent all the time. But then B, it's going to be harder for you to accept where you are and accept that's like accept what your body looks like if you're always doubting what you're doing. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think that's such an important piece to speak to as well, is because like that's why it's important to get help if you don't actually know what you're doing, because a lot
Right.
of the time like people are doing the right things, yet they're so full of doubt that then they stop.
Yep.
So I think yeah.
Absolutely. What do I call that? It's like you're so overwhelmed, you end up getting paralyzed, right?
Yeah, and it's just like, especially if it's coming from like a fear of failure, and if
Mhm.
like if that's your like main driving thing, then it does cause a lot of self-sabotage and people not being able to be consistent long term because of those that fear of not getting there and not seeing the results. So
Yeah,
it's an
exactly.
important thing. So one more thing that I wanted to ask you is, one of your Instagram posts was all about how to eat more. How can women eat more and lose weight? I
Mm.
would love you to dive a little bit deeper into that.
That's a loaded question because I just did a 45-minute webinar on it. So I'm gonna cut it down into into like
I know it is. There's so many layers to it. I totally get it. One thing I would love it if you could speak to in that is like the importance of building muscle. I myself right now am going through a calorie surplus, and I am like, I'm frothing it. I'm loving it
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah,
But I know for a lot of women that is like, whoa, no way. I would never, like, I'm not there yet.
totally.
So I would love to know like your perspective, your opinion on eating more, building muscle, and what that can actually do to your body.
Oh yeah. Okay. So like we talked about we already talked about BMR, right? And we
Yeah.
talked about like what were we saying? Oh, we were talking about your total daily calories that you burn, and we were talking about how 75% of your total daily calories come from you doing nothing. So your BMR is like someone's BMR, or let me put it this way. Let's say there is one 150-pound woman and then there's another 150-pound woman. Those two women might have very drastically different maintenance calories. One woman might maintain their weight at 2,000 calories, or let's say 2,500 calories, and the other woman might maintain their weight at 1,800 calories. What's going to determine whether or not somebody can eat more and stay the same, or eat more and lose weight, is going to be their body composition, right? What is their tissue breakdown? How much skeletal muscle mass do they have? Even things like bone density, like whatever. Fat is like, the fat molecule is a very lazy molecule. Like it doesn't burn a lot of fat in existence. Muscle burns like more than double. So now per pound of muscle, you burn, I think, up to 12 calories. It doesn't seem like a lot, and it's not really a lot, because let's say you put on 10 pounds of muscle, which is a good significant amount. That's only 120 calories burned a day. But at the end of the week, that's an extra 800 and some calories, which could very well mean you going out to dinner with a friend and
That's a
having
lot.
a nice flexible meal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And enjoying life a little bit more. Like, and also too, the idea of eating more is in an effort to help you build muscle. That's the first thing, right? But then I think the big question that a lot of women ask is, okay, so how is eating too little preventing me from losing weight
Yeah.
if I need to be in a calorie deficit to lose,
Yeah.
right? And then kind of part B to that question is, how do I make sure I'm eating enough but not too much, right? Because it's very easy to overeat as well.
Yeah.
And so what happens when women eat more is not that we're actually taking them at a calorie deficit, because we can actually see women eating more and losing weight at the same time. And then women are like, well, what the heck's going on? Is that magic? It's not magic. It's kind of science. It's like, it actually makes sense, because
Yeah.
when you are eating only 1,200 calories a day, and we talked about this earlier too, when you're eating 1,200 calories a day, your thermic effect of eating goes down.
Mm-hmm.
Your calories absorbed goes down. Your metabolic rate decreases. Your physical activity decreases because your energy is low. So the output that you can actually put into the gym decreases. You're probably walking less because your energy is low. Like, all of these things decrease. And we talked about metabolic adaptation. Like, your body down regulates in an effort to
Like
maintain
calories.
its weight.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. So then what happens when we eat more? The opposite happens. Our energy increases, our activity increases, our thermic effect of food increases because we're eating more. If we're eating a high protein diet, especially, the calories burned via food is going to increase.
Yeah.
And on top of that, the biggest overlooked thing is we're being more consistent,
Yeah.
right?
It's a hell
When
of a
I
lot
give,
easier.
exactly, like, if I gave you 1,800 calories to eat, the chances of you wanting to binge on the weekends or have snacks after dinner or crave ice cream or all these things goes way down,
Way down.
right? Because you're feeding yourself every day. So you're more consistent. you have less binge or cheat days, you're less stressed out because your body's fueling itself, which means you have more energy, which means you sleep better, which means your digestive system is fired up, which means you're making better choices, which means your hormones are working well, which means you're building muscle mass. And all of these things compounded on top of each other actually end up creating that necessary deficit for long enough for women to see weight loss. I think it's important to remember that weight loss doesn't happen from being in a calorie deficit for 1 week. You need to be in a calorie deficit for weeks and weeks and weeks consistently over time to see weight loss. Exactly. And so then the question becomes, how do I create the environment for me to stay in a calorie deficit for that long to actually see the weight loss? And what happens is women will restrict like insanely. They'll be in a calorie deficit for a week. They'll go out on the weekends and overeat and overdo it. And then they'll try again and they'll try again and they'll try again. And that inconsistency is not leading to the calorie deficit actually being achieved for longer than like 7 days. Right.
Or not at all, because they undo it on the weekend.
Or not at all. Exactly. Because by the time Sunday comes around, they've totally erased their deficit. Yeah. So I think that is really, I mean, that's the kind of quickest way I can explain why like women can eat more and lose weight, or actually what's happening to women when you see them eating more and losing weight. And I think it's also important to remember too, like just 1,200 calories a day for a full grown adult woman is just not enough. Like you just can't expect to thrive on 1,200 calories a day. I hope that answers the question. And I wonder, like, if anyone has questions about that, I'm sure they'll come to you. But because
I'll come to you.
It's not the simplest thing. Like it can be a little complicated if, especially we're used to hearing one thing, and then all of a sudden we're talking about eating more and losing weight. It can be kind of complicated to understand, but
yeah. Absolutely. And like you already said, there's like so many layers to it in terms of like everything that's contributing to like how many calories we burn in a day. It's not just this whole calories in, calorie out, what a lot of people think and know. There are so many more factors that are actually contributing to the whole equation. So I think what you've said was a beautiful summary of all of it. And just so everyone knows, it was a summary. There's so many layers. Like Robyn already said, like she did a 45-minute webinar on that topic alone. So it's definitely complex, but I think you did a fantastic summary of all of it. So I appreciate that. And thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. And if anybody has questions too, they can just ping you and you can ping me and we can try and get into it. Or if they ever want, like, I'm happy to send you the recording of the webinar too, right? Like, yeah, if anybody's asking you more about it, like we can connect and I can send you the webinar, and yeah, I'm happy to do that too.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we can do is put it into the show notes of this episode, because like it's such like I want everyone to know this stuff. Like this is like my sole mission is to help women not be afraid of food. Yeah. And one thing that I really noticed you said was just like you continually talk about the benefits and what actually happens when you start eating more food, and when you actually start eating the right amount of food to actually achieve a body composition goal. It's like, yes, you achieve the body composition goal, but you get your life back. You can go out for dinner without, the thought of like, oh my God, I just gained 5 kilos and now I have to restrict myself. And it's like that constant roller coaster, and like the energy, your relationships and all the things. So I love how that you continue to speak about that. To wrap all this up, where can people find you?
People can find me all over the internet. So I am on, and yeah, I can send you these as well if you want to put them in the show notes, but I'm on TikTok, Hustle But Healthy on TikTok. I am Robyn Shaw Jarvis, ROBYN, my name's with Y, on Instagram. I'm also on, my Facebook group is the Anti-Diet Weight Loss Club. We have a great Facebook community, with over 3,000 ladies in there who are all in the same mission, who are all really trying to, like you said, get their life back, honestly. So the Anti-Diet Weight Loss Club is a great place for people to go if they're looking to kind of just get their feet wet into, and all of my recordings and everything are on there as well too. So
amazing. I love what you're doing. It's so inspiring. And yeah, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Yeah.
Oh, and I always forget my website. I don't know why I forget my website. Bodzii.com is the website. So BODZII.com is where you can get information on kind of everything about what we do.
Amazing. I love it. So good. number one challenge that all my clients face before we start working together is a lack of clarity on how much and what to eat to lose weight. Often they are making two huge mistakes, constantly trying to skip meals or eat under 1,600 calories. Secondly, only allowing themselves bad foods like chocolate on the weekend, but end up binging, all to tell themselves they're going to start again on Monday. If you feel like you have tried every diet under the sun and still can't figure out what to eat to achieve your weight loss goals, take my free 2-minute quiz. You can find the link in the show notes down below, and it will help you figure out exactly what you're doing wrong with your nutrition and exercise, and exactly what to do to fix it so that you can finally be confident in your body and achieve your weight loss goals.